Hey everybody, today I'm out here in Healdsburg, California with my friend Sofyan, and we have my Mustang Mach E and the all-new Kia EV6 out here with us. On first glance, which one do you think is prettier? I have to admit I'm really torn.
You know, it's interesting to see the two vehicles side by side because you can really tell how much taller the Mach E is. I mean, yeah. Kia likes to call that an SUV, but I think that's a little bit of a stretch. This looks more like an SUV, and looking at the two vehicles side by side, I think I might prefer the Mach E more in the front.
Yeah, I'm a little torn. The interesting thing about the Mach E is a lot of people love the front trunk, but the result of having a front trunk means this has a much more traditional profile. This hood is way higher off the ground in front and considerably longer than the hood of this EV6. I know a lot of people think that the only reason a modern EV is lacking a front trunk is because it was based on some sort of ICE platform vehicle, but this is the hood you could fit an engine under, and this one is the hood you probably couldn't.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up because this longer hood is the reason why Ford calls this a Mustang, because they wanted to make it feel and look more like a Mustang. But it does give us some benefits, like you said, on the front, but it definitely looks better in my eye.
So I have a list of things that I thought about while driving these two vehicles today. Let's dive into the first one on the list, which of course is that front trunk that everybody is so obsessed over. You open that hood and I'll open this one. We can talk about what you can fit in here and what you can't fit. Double pull of this hood. So
yeah, the Kia is just a single pull.
Single pull, more traditional hood.
I already have it open, but this is always the million-dollar question with an EV is how much space do I get under the front trunk?
Yep, this one has an area where you could fit a 22-inch roller bag. And what do we have under hood number 2?
Underneath this lid, we have literally just enough space to probably put the charge cable in here.
Yep. Which, honestly, that's all I really use my front trunk for, is for the Tesla Tap and EVSEs, but you use your front a lot more.
I definitely do. I mean, one of the things I like about the front trunk is like putting, for example, if you guys get like fast food or takeout, you can put your food in here. You don't have to stink up the interior. And Ford has a drain in here, so you can use this as a cooler. There are cup holders in here. This is just a much more cool and more usable front trunk. So I think Ford did the better job here, but of course, Alex is going to bring his little suitcase.
And the party trick, of course, is suitcase in the trunk, and it looks like it might be too tall, but in fact closes just fine. So that is pretty handy. But you know, I would never put anything important in there for that impending accident that you never know is going to come down. I would never put my camera gear in there and then drive along.
But you could do that. That could also happen to you if somebody rear ends you with your stuff.
That's totally true.
So I'd say, honestly, I'll take the extra space. I wish Kia had given us a bigger front trunk, and I also wish that they had hid all this other stuff in here. It just it makes it look a little cleaner and more well finished.
But we do have this ultra modern front end with this sort of double karate chop styling here. I love that look, I have to say.
Now, the one thing that I also like is the red color on this car. Kia calls it runway red. I think it just looks a little bit more vibrant versus the, what is that red called?
I'm not sure what that red's called. I just call it Mustang red. I think I like the red on the Mustang better than this particular one. It's a little brighter, it's a little poppier. But the reason I wanted to do this video is because these two vehicles are surprisingly similar in size. They're only 1 inch longer than one another. They're obviously both red. And they're both really quite similarly priced, these two specific trims.
I think they're both around $57,000. They both give you 0 to 60 in under 5 seconds and around 270 miles of range. So
yeah, this one is 320 horsepower. It's 346, something like 346, something like that.
But this is heavier. This is like 200 pounds heavier.
One of the big differences, bigger battery pack in the Mustang Mach E. It's 98 kilowatt hours, and this one is
77.4.
Yeah.
What's interesting is that it has better range.
More efficiency. So the range on this one is 274 miles. That one technically is 2021, so 270. Now it's 277 for 2022. Let's take a look at one of the other big differences, which is cargo space, since we've been talking about that. And this is going to leave some people feeling a little bit sad. Because of the way Kia has shaped the EV6, this cargo area is a few cubic feet smaller than the Mach E's, and it doesn't have the benefit of that front trunk. Look over here.
Yeah, the Mach E has like almost 30 cubic feet of space here, and then if you fold down the seats, it expands it to like 59. But you can definitely tell this has more room.
You can definitely tell. And then under the load floor, there's plenty of room, lots of, you know, places where you can put your cables, etc., that sort of thing. Plenty of room back here. The side profile is quite different. We can come around this way and see them both once we close their power hatches, dueling power hatches.
What do you think of the taillight designs of both of the vehicles?
I find this more interesting. I find that more attractive.
And the other thing I like about your car is the fact that we have sequential LED turn signals. And I wish Kia would offer that.
And they're amber, which is my favorite turn signal color.
Yeah, I think those are just red.
These are just red back here. But when we open this power rear charge door, one of the big benefits of the EV6 becomes immediately apparent: faster DC fast charging. This will go from 10% to 80% in 18 minutes, right?
Right, versus the Mach E, which will take about 38 minutes. So this is literally twice as fast.
Ford says that, but mine took 43 minutes to do that on my way up here to drive this EV6, and I stopped at a Electrify America station, had no errors, took 43 minutes to go, oddly enough, exactly 10% to 80%. So not as speedy as this, about double the time, literally.
So what about performance, Alex? Because we got 4.5 seconds 0 to 60. What did you get in this
4.9 was my last 0 to 60 test in that one. So it is definitely a little bit quicker, even though it produces less power because of that weight that you mentioned. It's about 200 pounds lighter.
So one of the cool things about the EV6 is a feature that they call vehicle to load. That's something that Ford doesn't even offer on the Mach E. But basically, they give you this little contraption here that comes in this really nice case. And it has the J1772 plug, and essentially you just plug it right into this right here, and you kind of flip this down, and voila, there's a household power outlet there that offers up to 1900 watts.
1900 watts. So you can't power your whole house, but you could power, you know, your camp blender or your camp oven, or you can easy bake whenever you wanted to.
Or you can also charge another electric car. You can trickle charge an electric car very slowly, but I guess beggars can't be choosers.
That is a handy touch.
This is a cool feature, and I really hope that other brands do offer that touch.
But you know, one thing that Ford does do really well, and I would say that my best description of the Mach E is this is an honest-to-goodness Ford interpretation of what a Tesla could be. They definitely copied a lot of Tesla stuff, like this large glass roof. The entire roof in here is glass, very much like a Tesla. If you duck in there, you can see that. And we have something a little bit different in the EV6.
So in the EV6, instead of the all-glass roof, we kind of actually get a sunroof that opens. Now the downside is it doesn't actually extend over the back seats, but it kind of gives you a half panel roof. But the fact that it opens makes it very unique, because I don't think any other EV in the segment has a roof that opens. Even the Ioniq 5 does not have a sunroof that opens.
Correct. The other thing I really noticed on the EV6 are these tires.
Yeah, these are a 20-inch wheel wrapped in a 255/45 width tire. These are all seasons.
These are really wide. These are like Model Y wide.
Yeah, well, I think the Model Y is still a smidge wider, but it's nice to see that Kia put a fatter tire. And I also like the wheel design. They actually kind of have these plastic aero covers on them, but they don't look dorky like you find on most other EVs.
And then over here on this Mach E, I don't have the original wheels for a good reason. I wanted wider tires, and the widest that I could fit on this one were 245s. That's the same width tire on yours, right?
Yep, so I have a GT Performance, and these are 245/50 series. Mine are 245/45 because they're 20s, but you can see, Alex, you went with a P0 Pirelli.
I did.
This is the same summer tire on the GT Performance.
That's true. That's why I went with this particular tire. But according to Ford, when I asked them about this, it's not possible to put a wider tire on the Mach E, and remember, it is heavier. Now let's see what else was on my laundry list of differences here. I think I like the sort of interior storage in the Mach E a little bit better. Let me know if you disagree with this, just sort of shout right out. The Phone S key thing is cool in the Mach E, but it doesn't always work for me. With this one, you get 2 actual keys, so you could drive it just like a regular car. We also have the keypad entry. Do you ever use that on your Mach E?
Never used that. However, I will point out that the 2020 or the GT models for the Mach E does give you 2 keys. So I know yours came with just one key.
I only have one key.
And my phone as a key actually works most of the time. I'd probably say like 98% of the time.
If I'm at home, my phone as key works pretty okay, but if I'm doing a lot of stuff with my phone and then you just expect it to open immediately, it's not quite there. So when it comes to ground clearance, even though I agree with you, Sophie, that this is less crossover-y than the Mach E, oddly enough, this has more ground clearance. This is 6.3 inches, and my Mach E already has less ground clearance than an actual Mustang GT.
I think yours is like 5.8 or something like that.
Yeah, and yours is even lower.
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, nobody's going to be taking these vehicles off-roading.
Truly nobody.
But I guess it's weird because the Mustang has less ground clearance, but I also feel like I'm sitting up higher in it.
Yeah,
versus this
let's
car.
talk about that a little bit, because when we take a look on the inside, I will just do a quick demonstration here. We'll take a deeper dive in the interior a little bit later. The seating position is definitely more reclined. I tend to like to sit in an upright seating position, but if I'm here, my head is basically banging against this section of the roof unless I move to a more, I guess, sedan-like seating position. And I think that's the biggest thing I noticed about the EV6 is that it's like a lifted sedan sort of thing.
Yeah, it's very much a stretch that they call this a crossover, but somebody like Alex, he's like 6 feet tall. I actually fit fine in there, and I have plenty of headroom. I'm 5'7", so I'm a lot shorter. The one thing, Alex, we probably should talk about the door handles, because
the door handles are interesting.
Car.
Yeah, so these are pop-out door handles. I guess if I let's see here, if I lower this window, I can reach in and lock and unlock the car, and you can see that they pop in and out. What do you think of the funky Mach E door handles? Because these are really kind of weird over here. Do the Vanna White on the front door handle there, which is the only door with a door handle. It's this tiny little thing. And those are powered doors.
Yeah, so I actually really love the door handles, or the lack thereof, on the Mach E. I mean, yes, the Kia kind of has them flush mounted, but every time somebody walks up to my Mach E, at least, they kind of look at it and they just stare like, how do I open the door? And I kind of like that. It gives you that even extra futuristic feel.
I like the front door handle, but this one I think is weird.
Really?
Press the button and you're supposed to grab here on the door.
Yeah, there's like a little rubberized pad here, so this is supposed to kind of help you open the door. And if you guys are also worried about it crushing your hand, it won't actually...
There's pinch protection.
Yeah, it has pinch protection on it.
Sofyan and I have both jumped in the Mach E. So what do you think about this interior, Sofyan? Let's take a look at the top first, and then we'll work our way around.
Yeah, so the Mach E gives you this massive panoramic glass roof that doesn't open. Alex, you've also, I see, covered it because you don't like the sun hitting you in the head.
I am a sunshade person. I love the fact that you can close the one in the ID4 and, of course, the EV6. This one, I need my shade. So what about the rest of this interior? You said that yours has the black interior, right?
Yeah, so mine's called like ActiveX Performance Gray. They call it gray, but it's not really gray. It's more black. I really love your like space white or space gray interior color that yours comes with.
I do kind of like the lighter interior color because it helps break things up. The design of this seems, in a way more traditional than the EV6, but in a way less traditional with that ginormous screen in the middle.
This to me looks like it's copying Tesla.
It does.
You have the massive 15.5-inch screen, which is a half-inch larger than the Model Y, and then you have that smaller 10.25-inch screen there. And it's also very minimalistic. Like, you just have the two screens. There's nothing really else on the dash. You have the volume knob there. And it very much looks like Ford's answer to Tesla. I actually think it still looks modern. I like the kind of faux carbon fiber that you also have on yours with the stitching, and that massive speaker.
Fabric. Yeah, I like that fabric insert right there. That is a really nice touch.
Yeah, basically the massive speaker on the front for the B&O stereo. I think it still looks good. I do think the steering wheel on it, I kind of wish Ford gave us like a flat bottom design.
Yeah, it is interesting. This is the exact same steering wheel we find in a Ford Escape, except that Ford loves to rearrange the buttons. So on some of the Fords, there's an extra button bank down there at the bottom of those little bits.
And in terms of storage, Alex, do you think this has enough storage? I mean, I like the
storage in here. I think it actually is a little bit better than the EV6. We get like two tiers because there's that top tier where the phone is. There's a tier under it, cup holders, etc. This fold-up armrest is a nice design, and then there's that roller shade below. So when it comes to storage, I think that the Mach E wins the award there.
Yeah, and also it's interesting because both cars actually have rotary dial shifters as well. I do think that the Kia's is a little bit easier to use. I like how it kind of stops. The Ford keeps kind of rotating.
Yep.
That's kind of a small nitpick of mine. But overall, the interior of the Mach E is still really good. I also like the fact that this has wireless CarPlay. The Kia still has to, you have to plug in to use it. And you can also expand that screen. At least on mine. Yours also has that ability as well?
Mine does not. So my CarPlay is stuck to this particular size. That's coming later in a software update, so I can't do portrait mode CarPlay just yet. So sitting here in the rear, I think that this seating position is a bit more upright, and it does look like you have a little bit more headroom than we see in the EV6. How do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Mach E's back seat is actually pretty comfortable. Again, I'm like more average height at 5'7", so I have plenty of headroom. I have plenty of knee room. I could be comfortable back here, although I do think that the thigh support, actually, it's not too bad. I'll have to see what it is.
Speaking of thigh support, these seats are not as, the front seats, back to the front seats there, they're not as thickly bolstered as the EV6. So let's hop in the EV6 and take a look around. First, about that headroom, how do you think? It looks like you have maybe like an inch less?
It definitely feels a little more cramped back here, but it's also because we have no panoramic glass roof letting in a lot of light. But remember, this vehicle has like a roof line that's 3 inches lower, and it's pretty noticeable back here.
And you can definitely see, in a vehicle with a full glass roof like that Mach E, you can see how much space is taken up by a more traditional steel roof with the sound deadening insulation, all that kind of stuff.
But you know what? This has the ability to do that. That's something that you can't do in the Mach E. And
this is true.
I imagine a lot of people are going to like this.
I do love a moonroof that opens.
So the first thing I noticed about the front of the EV6, these seats, like it's just standing here, this is a really cool seat design. The seat itself still has a headrest that actually adjusts, but I don't think you can actually, no, you can still kind of move this forward. Yeah.
Yep. You can do four-way adjustment there, which I kind of like. This design, though, looks really unusual to me. I'm not sure if I like it or not yet, but it is really cool. And we have USB outlets right there on the seat back.
Yeah, I'm glad to see that Kia has finally switched to the USB-C outlets. I think they could have probably stitched this in like leather or covered it in leather.
It is hard plastic.
Instead of this cheap hard plastic. But I like the seats. They kind of make it look interesting. I also like the fact that they're two-tone. Like you have the suede Alcantara with the contrast stitching, and then you have
lots of different textures here. There's this armrest here, the light color down there, the two-tone on the seats. Lots of different things going on. How do you feel about this center console without air vents there, because the air vents are over here on the side pillar? I kind of like that. If someone's sitting in the middle, the air's always blowing on their knees, but it does kind of have an unusual feel there. Yeah,
I actually like how Kia put them on the side. I think it's a more thoughtful design touch. Actually, I didn't even realize they were there until you pointed them out, so they're actually well hidden. But the rest of the dash for me, I mean, I like how you kind of have that same textured material that is on the dash mimicked onto the actual center console. And compared to the Ford, this has a way more traditional look.
Yes.
I mean, traditional being like it has the two screens here that are oriented in the landscape mode, and it kind of forms almost one screen. And then you have that little panel right there with traditional touch-sensitive buttons and knobs.
This is a very Mercedes look with this two-screen setup here. Just over 12 inches, as I recall, correct?
Yeah, it's about 12.3 inches, and I think it looks fantastic. I almost kind of wish that Kia would merge the two screens together, but
that would be cool.
That's a little bit of a nitpick. I also like the steering wheel in this, that two-spoke wheel.
I do. I was really torn about this first, but in person, I like the design. And I like the fact that it has a flat bottom and it doesn't look like any other Kia steering wheel. So it definitely has that unique touch. Now the center console is a little bit different because it has a floating center console design, but under that center console, it's much taller. So you can put a bigger bag or a bigger purse or whatever you want under there. But I think it's a little bit less practical.
I would have to agree because the upper portion here, you just have this area here for a cup holder versus the Ford gave you a little bit more room. The wireless phone charging pad is back here, although
that worked well for me, I have to say.
I will have to agree, although Ford kind of gave you two places to put phones side by side. This doesn't technically do that. The one thing that Kia does offer are heated and ventilated seats.
Yes, this is something we can't get in the Ford. I like that as well. I will note that in a day of spirited driving, which we did a lot of today, my phone did not move around in this wireless charger, and it does a lot in the Ford. The center console storage bin is pretty similarly sized right there. Both vehicles offer ambient lighting, but I think this one is cooler than what we find in the Mach E.
Yeah, I would have to agree because you can change the colors in like 64 different ways. And when you change the color, you can see actually right now the ambient lighting is already splashing throughout, but that little area under the vents actually changes color based on the color of the interior.
That's pretty cool. And the ambient lighting in the Mach E is pretty typical Ford. I mean, it doesn't really feel too much different than the ambient lighting in an Escape or something along those lines. And then you were mentioning the heads-up display here earlier, and that is right over there. It's really difficult to film, but it is full color.
Yeah, it's a full color with augmented reality. So if you have the GPS on, it'll actually overlay like arrows over the street, over the actual street signs on the actual windshield. But it looks really cool. It's very Mercedes-like.
Yes.
In fact, the entire interior kind of gives me a vibe of luxury, and I think that's
it's a little bit of Mercedes, a little bit of Audi tossed in the blender.
Right, versus the Mustang's interior is kind of more modern, it's clean, it's simpler. This has a little bit more of a wow factor to it. So it's really, they're both nice, but I think this definitely will impress people a little more.
What do you think of the imitation suede seats? I love the feel and the look. I'm just wondering how well these will last long term.
I would have to agree. They feel almost like real suede, but I think this material, it's nice when it's new, but then after a few years, it just looks terrible.
It's a lot of recycled water bottle, apparently. And we do have slightly more aggressive bolsters right there, as you can see right by your hand there, and at the bottom of the seat. They seem to hug a little bit more, and they kind of make me think a little bit of the Mach E GT seats.
I would have to agree. During the spirited driving today, these seats definitely held you in place nicely. I'll be curious to see if Kia makes them even more aggressive in the full-on GT version.
Let's start out on the road in the EV6 all-wheel drive. Again, 320 horsepower, so a little bit less than the Mach E, but remember, lighter curb weight. What was our 0 to 60 time in this one?
We got 4.5 seconds, which is a little faster than Kia's claim, and it feels like it too.
According to the spec sheet, it was what, 4.6, I think, for this one? So it seems like Kia is really on target with their 0 to 60 performance, and that is also a little bit faster than the last Ioniq you had, right?
Yeah, the Ioniq, when we tested it last month, we got 4.9 seconds.
And I would not be surprised if the braking distances in this were less than the Mach E, because the Mach E did shorten down to about 110, 111 feet if you put summer tires on it, which is what I have on mine. But remember, from the factory, it has 225 with tires.
Yeah.
And I've always felt that those tires were a little small.
Yeah, Ford definitely went with that tire maybe for efficiency, for extra range, but it really kind of takes away from the fact that it's a Mustang. It's supposed to be better at handling, which the Mach E does well, but this does even better.
This does even better. Yeah, the handling is honestly really good, and I would love to see Kia do a factory summer tire package like, oddly enough, Ford started to do with the regular Mach E. This amount of power and the all-wheel drive makes it really easy to just get out in traffic when you need to. But it still has a strong rear power bias.
Yeah, it lets the tail step out, and honestly, that literally my phone just fell out from all the torque in this thing. It is fast.
It feels really, really good.
And this one's only at like 50% charge, 45% charge, and it still feels fast.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to hang on to its power, really quite low. I believe the engineers told me that it should be pretty similar all the way down to about 25% battery.
Okay, that's pretty impressive. That's very almost Tesla-like, because as we know with Ford, the power really starts to drop when it drops below 70%, and it's disappointing.
Yeah, and of course the philosophy here with the EV6 is a little bit different too, because this dual motor setup has a few modes that seem a little unusual compared to the Fords. The most important of which is Eco Mode, where if you put it in Eco Mode, it just doesn't use the front motor.
Yeah, it essentially just becomes a rear drive model with 225 horsepower instead of 320, which is, I guess, good if you're trying to get the maximum efficiency out of this car. In fact, what I like about this car is when you cycle between the drive modes, it actually will change the range on the screen. Like, it'll give you like an extra 5-10 miles depending on the drive mode you're in.
So Sport Mode, where it's going to be 50-50 as much as possible front and rear, 111 miles of range. Right now, Eco 117 and Normal 114.
Yeah.
And in normal mode, it will disconnect the front motor. It actually has a front axle disconnect feature, basically like we see in Ram trucks and Jeeps and things like that, for exactly the same reason, improved fuel economy.
Yeah, I really like the way this car drives. It feels like it's been designed and tuned by somebody who cares about driving.
Now, are you a fan of regen paddles? I happen to love them.
I love them as well, and I love how Kia gives you such amounts of customization with the regen. Like, there's 4 different levels, and the maximum amount is pretty much right on par with the strongest you'll get from Tesla and the Mach E.
Now, another question, which I think we're going to differ on, what is your default regen level? Like in your Mustang, do you like the aggressive regen? I like it coasting, so I drive my Mach E in whisper most of the time because there's very little, and I spent most of my time with this set to 0.
Okay, so you have the one-pedal drive turned off in yours.
Off. I hate one-pedal driving.
I leave it on in mine, but I have driven it with it off, and I will say that I actually sometimes prefer it, and it makes me wish that Ford offered more of the customization.
One-pedal driving is like the spawn of Satan to me. The only reason one-pedal driving exists in the EV world is because Tesla chose not to do blended braking, and that was the only way that they could give you, that efficiency of complete regeneration all the way down to a stop. But this has blended braking, and so does the Mach E, and both of these will actually pump more electrons back into the battery if you're using the brake pedal than a Tesla.
All right, so now we're in Alex's Mach E, and it's actually been a while since I've driven just a standard Mach E, the premium extended range battery pack with all-wheel drive. And I have to say, it's still a nice driving vehicle, and it has plenty of power.
Yeah, there's definitely plenty of power. It's so close, but it's ever so slightly less.
I am noticing when I put my foot down there is a slight hesitation, a slight delay that the EV6 does not have.
And the funny thing is, with a lot of EVs, that is really the big difference in performance, is how quickly will all the power ramp up. Because this one, you don't get full power until you're going about 30, 35 miles an hour or so. And it seems like in the EV6, it's a bit sooner.
Yeah, I'm noticing a little bit more of a delay in this car versus my GT Performance, but I mean, obviously it's still plenty fast. I mean, this has 346 horsepower from what I believe.
Sounds
but the first thing I noticed about this car is it definitely feels heavier. It
does.
feels heavier, and it feels like I'm sitting up a lot higher. Versus the Kia, because that longer hood really makes a big difference in just the feel of this car. But you know what? It's still a nice, sporty driving vehicle. I like the steering in it. I like the visibility in it. The ride, though, you're right, is much firmer.
And the funny part is, I agree with you that it feels like I'm sitting more upright, but when I actually checked and just did a rough measurement with my leg and how high the seats were off the ground, it's almost exactly the same, this and the EV6, but the seating position is definitely different, and so much more headroom here makes it feel feel a little bit more crossover-like, a little bit more roomy as well.
Yeah, that taller roofline makes the interior feel a little more spacious, and that could be a deal breaker because a lot of Americans, we want that additional space, and the Mach E gives that to you for sure.
Now, if you want more of a sedan-like feel, though, that is certainly the EV6.
Yeah, so I'm gonna turn back on the one-pedal drive. I know how much you love that, because I want to compare it to the EV6, because this is with it off right now. It has a little bit of
It has a little bit. You can simulate it. In unbridled, it's pretty aggressive, and you can also, in any of the modes, if I hit this engage mode for you, well, let's do whisper for you. You can always put this little L button here, and then it gives you more aggressive regen.
Okay, but this is very minor. This is like what the ID4 gives you.
Yeah.
Because you go into the one pedal mode, and it's like super aggressive. It comes to a stop. Although
it will come to a complete stop, and of course it'll blend the brakes and use the friction brakes at the end.
I think the EV6's regen braking might be stronger in max.
I think so. It's pretty aggressive in max regen mode.
Yeah, but again, I wish Ford gave us a little more customization here with the one pedal drive feature and the regen braking.
Yeah, it's not easy to do it. You can basically have 6 different levels of regen. You can have drive in all 3 of the modes, or low in all 3 of the modes, and then you can toss on one pedal drive, which is consistent basically across the modes.
The other thing I want to mention, Alex, your seats in this one, I think they're more comfortable than the Kias. They just don't hold you in place as well.
Right, they're a little softer, but for me, the fact that the seat bottom cushion doesn't tilt is kind of a problem. I noticed that, because I would like to sit up a little higher, but then I don't like the tilt when the seat is up higher. Both of these, honestly, are pretty fun. I mean, that instant acceleration that you get in an EV, any way you slice it, both of these are great vehicles, good EVs. If you like the styling of one more than the other, then obviously that's the right EV for you. I think this is a sort of a nitpicking, dividing thing here. You know, which little bits do you like more than the other? So just, I would issue that disclaimer now in the video. Absolutely could not go wrong with either of these 2 EVs.
Yeah, I mean, this one here is a little bit slower, but it's still plenty fast. It still handles really nicely. It offers a little more room, so there are advantages of the Mach E, but really it's just going to come down to what do you prefer in terms of the design. I mean, the faster charging in the Kia might be a deal breaker for somebody looking at the Mach E, but even in terms of driver assistance, let's talk briefly about that, because yours is lacking the Blue Cruise.
Yep, I have the hardware. I have this little module staring at me all the time.
This thing right here.
That thing reminding me that I do not have that option yet. And Ford is not overly specific about when that will be available for early customers.
Yeah, that must be frustrating for people who currently own like the one that you have right now, because all the GTs are shipped with the Blue Cruise function. Although I will say that the Blue Cruise still needs a little work, because I know it offers the hands-free, but the one thing I hate about mine is it'll be on hands-free, I'll be driving,
and then it will turn off.
And it'll just turn off. And I'm just like, what if I'm not paying attention?
And with a very light ding. It like dings, but it's super soft. If you're rocking out to your tunes, you're not going to notice this.
You're not going to notice, and that could be a potential safety hazard. So I think Ford needs to do something, because even the Cadillac or the GM Super Cruise system doesn't do that.
I have to say, if you're an early adopter of a Mach E, I think I would be offended that I wasn't first with the Blue Cruise and that the new people get it and mine's still not working. I would have loved to have seen them, send it out to those, even if it was just like the first 3,000 or 4,000 cars with it, let them try it, that kind of thing. It's a little disconcerting there on that front.
I would agree. Ford definitely needs some work, I guess, with the over-the-air updates. This is where Tesla, as a software company, would be further
And I would
along.
use that Tesla parallel, because Tesla seems to do that early adopters first thing, which I think helps breed brand loyalty and EV buyer loyalty. The other thing I'm noticing as we're driving around some of these winding roads as a passenger where I'm not clinging onto the steering wheel is there's a lot more room beside my head here. The EV6's body really curves in. It's a very curvaceous style to give that low drag and of course better aerodynamics, but it really means that the body in this area tucks in at least 3 inches. A lot less shoulder room, a lot less side headroom in that EV6, especially in the back where you can really tell that body wraps around.
Yeah, you got to pay for that sleeker design, but you know what? I still think the Mach E is a really good looking car.
It's a really good looking car,
especially
I agree.
In certain specs. Like I love mine in the blue, but yours still looks good. So this is definitely not an ugly EV. I mean, there are definitely other EVs out there that are a little less fortunate looking.
Yeah, it just reminds me of a real Mustang that got stung by a bee.
But not quite as bad as the Tesla Model Y compared to the Model 3.
I think this is prettier than the Model Y. I like the styling. I like the fact that it has real taillights and normal-looking headlights and screens where you expect them to be, that sort of thing. Really, my only interior complaint just is the lack of a power shade, which Volkswagen gives us in the ID4.
See, I don't mind it because I think it's already dark tinted enough, but I also like the sun.
Well, there you have it. That is our quick look at the EV6 and the Ford Mustang Mach-E. Where can they find you if they're interested in more of Sofyan?
Yeah, so you can find us, of course, on YouTube. It's just Redline Reviews. We also do TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook, and our TikTok is called Redline_Reviews, same thing as our Instagram.
Yep, all those other social things. So again, if I were to do this again, I would buy the EV6, but you would buy a Mach E GT at the moment, right?
I'd go for the GT because this one here is $57,440. Yours is around the same price. You can get a GT Mach-E for about 62. So
yeah,
I'd probably
that's
just go for the
And
GT.
would you, do you think, would you wait for an EV6 GT, or would you Mach E GT right now?
I would consider waiting for it, but we don't know what the price is going to be. So it's really going to come down to what Kia prices it at.
And they are going to sell this in all 50 states, but we don't know how available it will be.
No, Kia, I asked Kia that actually during the presentation, and they would not answer us how many in terms of production capacity.
Right, yeah. So that is one open-ended question. And of course, Ford claims that they're going to work up to building 200,000 Mach-E's a year at some point. We don't know when that is exactly going to be. Sometime between now and 2023, production will get up there. And this is, of course, going to be more limited, I think, at the beginning.
Oh, definitely. This is going to be a high-demand vehicle, and I wouldn't be surprised to see these with dealer markups again.
So be sure and sound off down there. Let us know what you think about the look, and we'll see all of you later.